Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with the Future. We're switching the script up a little bit today. I'm your host, Dan Sebastiano, joined by my co-host, Psychic Medium Angelo. Angelo, how you doing today?
I'm wonderful. It's a little unusual on this end of it.
You think you're going to be okay?
Maybe I'm a little out of my element, but I'll try.
An old Boxing Day tradition. Joined on the panel with us is our frequent co-host and panelist, filmmaker, producer, actor, director, writer, and everything else he'll gladly tell you that he does. Mike Messier. Mike, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. Good to be here tonight, gentlemen. We have a special lady guest, a real lady, and a legend in the world of professional wrestling, someone who I've never met before, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
That we do, and neither you nor I were on the part one, so this is going to be a treat for both of us. And Mike hit it straight on the head. Joining us, a true legend of the business, the Mount Rushmore of Southern women's wrestling, without question. Legend, champion, multi-time champion, multi-promotion. Wherever she went, she was kicking ass. Doesn't matter. Taking names. You know it. Joyce Grable, ladies and gentlemen. Joyce, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. You know, I loved wrestling. I loved wherever I went. And I enjoyed reminiscing and bringing up things that I've forgotten about. So you just hit me with your best shot.
Well, we're going to have plenty of good questions for you today. And I want to start in part one. You mentioned, obviously, you really can't get into your career without discussing the time you spent training under the fabulous Moolah. But I was hoping to expand a bit on that part of your career, how you got into it, and your time with Moolah. I wonder, Angelo touched on in the first part with the motivation behind what brought you to wrestling in a time when women's wrestling wasn't really a big thing. I'm curious, who specifically were you watching as a teenager growing up? Who were the women that you watched that you said that made you want to seek out somebody like Moolah?
Well, I think really Moolah and Vicki Williams that night that we went to Atlanta, I think that was the first time I really saw girl wrestlers in person. I'd seen them on TV, but not in person. And when we went to Atlanta, the auditorium that night, and Moolah and Vicki Williams was such a great wrestler, too. In fact, she became my partner, and we won the belt in Madison Square Garden. But when I saw them, I didn't want to be a wrestler. Moolah saw me and asked the girl that wanted to be a wrestler, she wanted to be a wrestler, and so she said, only if you bring the blonde sitting next to you. And so she taught me into it.
So you kind of, you were pretty much recruited.
Yes. It was, if I didn't go, she couldn't go. And she really wanted to be a wrestler. And so I said, okay, I'll go with you. And then she didn't make it, and I did. So that was fine. But I was a natural. I could do flying head scissors and drop kick within 2 weeks. And most people can't. But I had all these brothers. And so I was in good physical condition. And at 19 to be that far away from home. But I did it. And listening to people when they say, my poor baby going off and only 19 to 20 years old. Lady, I was in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and I mean, I couldn't call and say, Mama, come get me. You know, you had to grow up quick. And with Moolah, you growed up because it was up to you. We called in when we got to where we were going. We called in, gave her the phone number of the hotel we were staying, and then if we got booked before we left that territory, then we would just move on to the next territory. But the workouts were hard. We worked out twice a day for at least 2 hours a day. And I mean, you were so sore. And I would be on the road and come back home. One or two girls would be done, came and left, and I wouldn't even meet them. And because everybody's just not cut out to be a wrestler. It's hard work. It's not just getting out there posing like the everyday things are today. You didn't go out there posing, looking at the camera, smiling sweetly. Only if you were the baby face did you do that. When you were the heel, you kept your composure as a heel the whole time.
That's true. Back then, the merchandise, what there would have been, the ticket sales, the fan interactions, that was all faces. Now, I'm curious. I want to kind of segue. You brought up a good thing. Bill Dundee is a friend of the program. He's been on the show numerous times. He has a lot of good stories about wrestling in Australia, and he's never really got into much of women's wrestling in Australia. You mentioned being obviously touring Australia. What was the atmosphere like? How was women's wrestling perceived in Australia?
I was only there for one night, and so I only did that one and went to New Zealand for 2 weeks. It's right there. That was just like a stopover till I got to New Zealand. So I don't know that much about Australia. But New Zealand, I love New Zealand. Mm-hmm. New Zealand was right there, and I'm sorry, I'm not something else. They speak English, so you didn't have to do another language.
Right.
And except the restaurants closed they were open from that morning till 11 o'clock, and then they closed to 2 o'clock, opened back up for a few hours. But you don't notice when you first get there. And so we get up late because, we work the night before and we get up late. And we got up and no food. We had to wait till that afternoon when they opened back up for dinner before we could eat then. And their TV was like 20 years behind our television. The shows and stuff. So they were a little backwards than us, but I was over there with Rick Martel and Leilani Pye and a few of those. So we really had fun over there.
Well, let me bounce you off here, Mikey. I see you kind of nodding along. I'm going to bounce the next question to you. You want to expand on this?
Yeah, well, Joyce, I mean, just one thing I read about your career, and maybe this was covered on the first episode with you a month ago, but from what I read, and correct me if I have this wrong, but you came in as Joyce Grable, and you were kind of named in honor of Judy Grable, who was a pioneer in women's wrestling. But there was another lady that wrestled with the Joyce Grable moniker, but they thought that you could kind of do a better job or evolve the Joyce Grable persona. And to me, this was fascinating. Can you explore that topic a little bit more?
Yes. The first Joyce Grable, her name was Joyce Fowler. And then she married George Becker. And she wrestled under Barbara Nichols for a while, and then she wrestled under Joyce Fowler. She only wrestled under Joyce Grable for a very short period of time. And then she left because she married George Becker and wanted to have babies. You know how it goes. So when I went, and Mula showed me a picture of what Joyce Grable looked like. And we had the same, at that day and age of me, features. I mean, we didn't look a lot alike, but we had the same features, same body type. So she asked me, would I consider going under Joyce Grable? I just thought, that sounds a lot better than my real name, so that's fine with me. And so I stayed with Joyce Grable, and I was number one as Joyce Grable.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I did it and I gave it all I could, every territory, and I really like territories. I went into, we always had I never had a out and out squabble with one of the ones booked in or the owner of the territory. The only person I didn't get along with was Nick Goulas. And he was the only person that when I asked him for my money when I was leaving the territory, I told him 2 days before we're leaving and we're going to Kansas City and then up to Calgary, and so I need my money, and he wouldn't give me my money before I left. And so we kind of had, I mean, I've already worked it. You owe me this money. So I just said, Lillian, never send me back to Tennessee. The rest of the people in Tennessee I loved. The other part, Knoxville, I liked. But Nick Goulas and me, he should have gave me my money. But hey, that water under the bridge. I got to the next town. Had to use the old plastic, but who cares? That's what it's for.
Angelo, go ahead.
Joyce, did you know that you actually wrestled with my ex-wife?
Oh, who's your ex-wife?
She wrestled under the name Kim Novak. She worked for Nick Goulas and Ann Jeanette.
Oh, now I remember Ann Jeanette. Yes.
Yeah, my ex-wife was her tag team partner.
Oh, okay.
The blonde girl, big chest and big blonde hair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned Nick Goulas. We've had, as Dan said, we had we had Bill Dundee on the show, and Bill's a good friend of the show, and he's talked about Nick Goulas. Why did Nick have such a horrible, horrible reputation in the Tennessee territory? What was his problem?
He just thought that it's like the Mexican boys. When they came in, he would take their visas and their passports because that was control for him. And so he thought that he could control everybody. And a few of the guys would let him get over with control. A few of the guys would buck him. And if he liked you, he would give you everything. To them, he was the nicest person in the world. And he had always been nice to me up to that night. And so, maybe he was just having a bad day.
No, everyone told us, and Dan and Mikey have been part of past shows. Everyone told us that Nick Goulas was just a horrible cheapskate, that he didn't like to pay people. They said he had his favorites. Mm-hmm. He had his favorites, that he would take care of his favorites, and then everybody else he would just kind of stiff them on their pay.
Right.
That's crazy.
And that's the truth. That's exactly. And that's not how you keep a territory going. You had to treat everyone the same, because no matter what, it's like I could go in there with a girl, even if we had words outside the ring. When it came to business, I could go in there and have as good a match with her as I could if I was working with my best friend. Because I never let that interfere with my work.
Yeah. Dan, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that I wanted to cover on the first show that I wasn't able to cover because we were very limited on time that night, and we've got a lot more time tonight, so we're good to go. Is that one of the things I wanted to ask you was your family. What did your family think of this whole wrestling thing for you? Did you get a lot of pushback, or what was the whole kind of feel from like your family or siblings, parents, whatever?
Well, like you said last time, I never smartened up none of my family. My mother, when she went to the matches after I was working for a while, and she would go, she would think it was real, and she would really get upset. And I never told her any different. The day she died, my brothers, and even my husband, I was married, for 3 years, and my husband would go, if it was drivable with me. I never smartened him up. He never did. And he would ride with me, and sleep with me, but he never knew that how things work, the inner of the wrestling business. And that's the way we did things back then. We never broke our kayfabe. We never told anyone. In fact, it made it a lot better. We had our own little language we would speak. And so it was fun. I had a very fun time, with the 30 years I did that.
Well, let me ask, expanding on that. You obviously you're a multi-time champion throughout the NWA, the South. You mentioned Tennessee, some of the other territories. Was there any territories in that time period when you were on the road that you wanted to work and never got a chance to?
No, I think I worked but I never got to work Alaska. Vicky Williams, who was my partner, her and Leilani Kai got to go over into Alaska and work for a week or so. But the closest I ever came was when I was up there for Calgary. We went to Vancouver, and just right over there is Alaska. But I never got to work Alaska. All of the other states, I worked.
Okay, and oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Well, then having to again more on the territories at the time, and it's come up numerous times on the show. A lot of the talents that were coming through that talked about the styles they encountered. Obviously, Southern wrestling had its own style. Texas wrestling had its own style. There was the Canadian style. And names like the Dynamite Kid, for example, where he was renowned for being good because he was able to learn the Canadian style and the Southern style, and he learned the Japanese style. As someone who traveled as much as you did, how did you adapt to the local talents that you would be working with that would wrestle such vastly different styles? And like you said, week after week, having to wrestle in Calgary and Tennessee might as well have been wrestling on two different planets.
What you got to remember, we usually work against Louisville. So even though we would be in the different territories, we was against someone that we knew how they wrestled.
Okay.
When I was in Mexico, they take the rolling bumps like the WWE does now. When you see how they're training, they take the rolling. Okay, we took flat bumps. The back bump, the belly bump, we would take flat bumps. They take rolling bumps. And then they would do little things like a shoulder tackle, drop down, this. And here in the States, the girls didn't usually do that. And then when you went to Japan, they had their own little style. Theirs was chairs outside. I'd hit you in the head with a chair. And so you had to really watch them and be ready to duck into, you couldn't take it. You had to have eyes in the back of your head because they had their style in Japan. And I really liked all of them. I always picked up a move or so from from those girls that I would wrestle over there. But here in the States, like, okay, New Zealand. When Leilani Kai and I went to New Zealand, they wrestled in rounds. And so it was so hard. That first time, we didn't know it when we first got here. And when they came to the dressing room and told us that you were
We
going
have a
on
surprise
so
for
many
you.
rounds.
Yes. Joyce, I'm sorry to cut you off. We have a guest that's called us in. You can hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Joyce, you're on the line with Judy Martin.
Oh, hey,
Joyce.
Judy.
How you doing,
How
girl?
are you? I'm doing really good considering the thing. Yes. I'm so glad to hear from you.
Yeah, me too. So what
We
you been up
we
to?
do that. We do that. We like to surprise people, Joyce. And I spoke to Judy today, and I said, Judy, would you do me a favor? We got Joyce Grable on the show tonight. I would love for you to do a run-in, a couple of minutes, and talk to her. We'll surprise her tonight. And of course, you know, Judy, being very gracious, said, absolutely. So we'll call you at 8:00.
Yes.
There's your old tag team partner. There you go. So I want you ladies to catch up a little bit. Talk.
He said that he watched us, the two girls against the two guys, this week, and stuff. And that night, the two guys were across the Omni from us. We did not know if they got side headlock the same way we did. We didn't know even if they locked up the same way we did. But
Right.
if you watch that video, we give them hell, and we really have a good match with them. But if
Well, I
couldn't
have
wrestle-
another surprise for you. Judy and
Okay.
Joyce, I have another surprise for both of you. We actually found the match of you and Judy against the two guys.
Are you kidding?
Oh,
And we're gonna show it. We're gonna show it to you right now.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Here it is. When's the last time you saw this?
it's been a
I haven't
long
seen-
time.
And
Yeah.
I haven't really seen the match. I haven't
Judy,
really
we're,
seen the
we're
match all the
watching
way
you
through.
and Joyce in a mixed match with two guys here.
Yeah, Steve
Pretty
O
amazing.
and yeah, that's that was at the Omni years and years ago.
So Thanksgiving night, 1980, the annual tag team tournament that took place at the Omni.
Right.
And apparently you two had to petition the NWA, and it was kind of like a woman's empowerment angle that got you into the tournament, and you're facing Steve Olszanowski and Jacques Rougeau, who would go on to a lot of WWF fame, I believe.
Mikey, why don't you do the play-by-play and tell Joyce and Judy what we're seeing?
Okay, well, we're in the Omni now. For those that don't know, there's a kick out from Steve O. I think that's Judy in the red and Joyce in the white, if I'm not mistaken. And I
Yes.
think this
Right.
is Joyce in the ring now. Olszanowski was going for a single leg. Joyce kicked out. Judy's giving Steve a little hell from the apron. Steve's a little bit confounded in his own thoughts right here, but he seems to be handling most of the match for him and the young Jacques Rougeau. I'm not sure who the referee is right now for this, but it looks like it could be a young Scrappy McGowan, perhaps, or
Yeah.
possibly Tommy Young.
Scrappy McGowan.
It's Scrappy. Okay, so now we're in the corner.
Up.
Steve O's
Judy's
getting
cheating.
choked.
Judy's cheating.
Yep. Well, Joyce is getting a few shots
Judy
in.
Martin is cheating.
Steve was in enemy territory, and now Scrappy is trying to get this thing under control. The fans are very attuned to this. Of course, this is 1980. We're a couple of years away from Geraldine Ferraro running for vice president with Walter Mondale. That hasn't even happened yet. Steve-O now with the hammerlock on Joyce, the tag to the young Jacques Rougeau, who comes in with the front face lock. Jacques here is probably only about 210 pounds. He gained a lot more weight later on in his career. Judy's coming in now to make the save and put Jacques into a front face lock, show him how it's really done, and get a few forearms on the back of the neck and the vertebrae, the C5 vertebrae, while she's at it. Knee to the midsection. Looks like an underneath choke type maneuver from Joyce on Jacques. We're moving forward a little bit. It looks like a body slam has been reversed, and now Judy's getting a 2 count, very close to a 3. The referee might have been showing a little favoritism. Looks like a small package here by Judy Martin. Jacques is trying to fire up, but once again he's confounded, and the two ladies are really dominating the action, and now we have a tag out. Here comes Steve-O back in, trying to get this thing. Oh, a nice kick to the midsection for his trouble. Judy Martin now. Yep, she's up in the air for, looks like a body slam attempt by the young Jacques Rougeau. He's got her overhead. He's got her in position for a full power slam. Plants her down to the mat. Might have gotten a little bit of a, there's a 3 count.
Oh.
It looked like a little bit of a fast 3. And Steve Olszanowski and Jacques Rougeau barely survived this tag team tournament match. But
Yeah.
I think they were so weakened, from my understanding, they didn't go much further in the tournament than that.
When's the last? That's been a little while since you saw that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but didn't you see some good punches in there?
Yeah, but you guys
What-
cheat like
what-
a son of a gun.
You had to. We were women. They were men. If we hadn't, it wouldn't have even been as close as what it was.
I know. I'll tell you
because,
what. You guys, Judy, you remember this match, obviously.
Yes.
I tell you what, you guys, you know what? You know, you, and I have to tell you, you're both beautiful women, you know, and both at the top of your game. There was no need to cheat like that, but I understand why you did. I understand why you had to even out the playing field. But, you know, at the time, did you guys know that you were making history?
Yes, because Ole Anderson, you know, he was the booker. And Ole said, I'm going to do this. Vern Gagne called him up and said, no, you're not. There is no way you're going to put 2 girls against 2 guys. The people aren't going to buy it. It's going to be just, you know, vulgarity. Just, it's going to be this and that. And so Ole said, no, I'm going to wait another couple of weeks, because every week Judy and I would go to Atlanta and make promos and stuff. And I wrestled a girl every week, Sabrina, Victoria, all of them, and I would beat them to lead up to this match. And so Judy and I, we would do it. And so Bobby, Ole told Bobby Simmons, you go sit at ringside. If during the match, if you start hearing vulgarity and stuff from the audience about crotch shots, you know, just vulgar stuff, so you just go in, stop the match, this and that, and just stop the match. Those people, they weren't thinking vulgarity. They were thinking, if you could have heard the sound of that match, they were hollering to kill us the whole time.
Jeez.
You know, the way you're supposed to get heat, the way you build them up, and then you give them the big slam.
Dan, I
and
have a
that's it.
question for Judy. Judy, Angelo here. How you done?
Yes. Okay.
What was your game plan going into this match?
Game plan was just we were out there to to prove that women could hang in there in a men's match just as good as a man's, because we trained. The only thing is we trained on a little different side at that time. But we could do just about anything those guys could do, and it was our chance to prove that. And so Joyce and I just got together and said, well, hey, we do what we can to win.
Well,
it's our time to shine.
As Mikey pointed out, between the front kicks and the face locks, there was some stuff you definitely did better than the men in that match. But
yeah.
I'm curious, Judy, when you were on the program the other day, we kind of touched on the modern women and the evolution. You could never have a match like that in today's wrestling because no one would take it seriously. Do you think that's more of a testament of the changing of the times, or the fact that the women of your generation were booked to be as tough, badass as any male competitor was?
I think the women was booked, and should be badass as the guys was back then. I mean, for a while there, in the new generation is you saw divas, what they call the divas generation and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I still think that downplayed a lot of the women today from that era there. But I mean, they got some good women out there now that can really work and stuff like that. But I don't think they're taught the psychology like we were taught the psychology, because psychology has, like I said, has 100% to do with the match.
I have a question for both of you. Dan, if you don't mind, can I ask?
No, go ahead.
Okay. We've had conversations about Moolah on the show before. She was a tough trainer, but they said that if Moolah liked you, she was extra hard on you. Why was that? Why did you find that Moolah was harder on the people that she liked?
Well, it's according to what you mean by harder on you.
Well, that she would. We were told by other female wrestlers that if Moolah liked you, she would really push you to try to bring that quality out of you. That she was harder on the people that she liked.
Yeah, she wanted to push you to do your best. She did. And she would
that's
say,
what I'm
no,
getting at. Yeah.
You can do it better. You can do it. And I appreciated that because it made me get to the point that I could throw the best drop kick from the turnbuckles. And that was my finishing thing for a long time, was the drop kick from the turn. I saw Becky Lynch do it. I've seen a lot of the girls of today do the drop kick from the turnbuckle. But if she hadn't pushed me that you can do this, Joyce, then I never would have tried it, because getting up that high and jumping off, that's a big bump. But see, back then, if we did 2 or 3 big bumps during the match, that was all we had to do. When they start out, bump, 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 they're so fast today that you can't see what they're doing. If they just slow it down just a little bit and can see it, and the people get into it, and then the audience will tell you what they want. Mm-hmm. And then you just give them what they want, and you have a good match and didn't have to take the 2 or 3 bumps. Judy will tell you, we would go out there, we could have great matches together or as partners, and we didn't bump that much. We might have took 3, 4 bumps during the whole match, but if you give the people what they want to see, then they're going to appreciate it better.
Judy, to expand on that, is that why you that what she was saying about the bumps, is that why careers, the average careers of the female wrestlers back in your generation are longer than what we're seeing today?
Yeah, because you had to be taught the right way to take a bump. And, you know, and there's always a reason for every bump you take. There should be a reason why you're taking that bump. And you got to protect yourself out there. So you have to be taught the right way to do a bump. And that's how you last longer in this business. And sometimes we worked like, you know, every night of the week. And sometimes on Sundays, we worked 2 matches on Sundays and Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I think this time it's more like, you know, I've seen them a lot of them land on their hips and stuff like that. So, it, you know, a lot of it has to do with the correct way to take your bump and stuff.
Okay.
They do the rolling bumps instead of the flat bumps. Because Judy, remember, we were taught to take the flat bumps. And this day, they roll, and when they roll, either their shoulders hit or the hips hit first. And that's the reason they had to have so many surgeries.
As a fan that's watched matches for across decades, the flat bump looks a lot more realistic and natural as a fall as well.
Right.
Well, Mikey, I'm going to defer to you here. You've got 2 legends of female wrestling on the line. You want to add to this?
Yeah, I do. I guess, you know, what I was watching the last couple of days for research for this episode was just the interest level in women's wrestling. Although there was less women's wrestlers in the 80s than there is in 2020. When you ladies came to town, and it was for people to get a full grasp of this, the women's wrestlers were not on every single show. They weren't on every single TV episode. Women's wrestling was viewed, and this is a compliment to you ladies, please take it that way, as almost like when Andre the Giant came to town. Like it was a unique attraction that people could get behind and be excited by, or if there was a battle royal. Back in the day, there wasn't a battle royal on every show either. So when the women came and did a match, it percolated interest. And I remember seeing, I think it was Joyce, you were in a tag team match in Madison Square Garden that had a lot of interaction between yourself and Gilberto Roman, the referee. And when I was a kid, Gilberto Roman was the referee that just had this look that he was always confused by where he was. Like he thought he was going to be delivering pizzas that night, and somehow he ended up in Madison Square Garden as a referee. But I just wondered if you could expound upon those kind of light moments, almost like when I say comedy moments, it's more like the Terry Funk type of comedy. But when you and Gilberto Roman or even Dick Worley, you had some moments with Dick Worley, same type of thing.
Oh.
Was that like kind of something you guys would work out, you and Dick or you and Gilberto? Would you work it out before the show, or was that just spontaneous fun that you were having?
Spontaneous. That's what I was saying. You listen to what the people want, and you give it to them. We didn't work out. I think you're referring to the match with me and Penny Mitchell. And
Right.
Dick Worley was refereeing.
Yeah, in Philadelphia,
And
I think.
She was really young, and so me and Dick just had the match. And he was so good. I would tell him, kick my hand, or not. And he, Dick was so good. But then when she threw me off and I got on his back, I knew he was going to stand up and back drop me off. And when he did, the people, if you listen to the people on that set, they popped. I mean, they were just right there on the edge of their seats, and they were ready for it. But you see, and we didn't plan none of that. We didn't plan it. We didn't say, now if this comes up, we're going to do nothing. We went out there. Penny knew how to take the bump. and she knew how to listen to what I would say to her. And so, and then Dick would too. Dick would do anything. You know, he didn't care. He was a great referee. I really liked him. And so we had the match. Nobody knew that Mitchell was new. They didn't know it because he walked around it. And that's how you have to do when you're working with a new person. You just walk around them, make them look good, and then do the finish. And so, I mean, the people loved it, and that's what counts. If you get them up and bring them down, and then they're still screaming at you, then you know you did your job.
Very true. Judy, I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit of a story here. How was that, having to deal with a tag team partner who was so interested in hot dogging with the referees? Did you have to kind of carry that, or was that something y'all played in the corner?
No, I mean, what happened, we just went out to it. Sometimes, you know, a lot of times, like Joyce says, I mean, I've been in the matches with the referee too, where the girl, well, like Leilani, sometimes she ended up accidentally on the referee. And I thought, oh, okay, I see that. So I'll go in and join right on in with that. That's my time. A lot of times when I did that, that was my time. Shoot, I'd pinch that referee anything I could get to do at that time. When he was down rolling, because he didn't know who did it.
Go ahead, Mikey. What do you got?
I wanted to follow up with Judy Martin on this one, because Judy, one thing that kind of enraged me in the last year or two, and I'm known as the angry wrestling fan at times, is that the WWE in 2019 was promoting what they called the first ever women's tag team title, and I was very upset and offended because I fully remembered and enjoyed the Glamour Girls, yourself and the aforementioned Leilani Kai, as the women's world tag team champions of the World Wrestling Federation in 1988, actually being featured at Survivor Series 1987, with a very good match, and you were in there with Sensational Sherry and Fabulous Moolah and Rockin' Robin, and then you actually had a title defense that got a lot of attention against a team called the Jumping Bomb Angels at the very first Royal Rumble in 1988, and all that history. I believe you two regained the titles with manager Jimmy Hart in your corner. This is Judy Martin and Leilani Kai as the Glamour Girls. And so when the modern day WWE was trying to tell us that Sasha Banks and Bayley were their first ever women's champion in this Elimination Chamber thing, I took great exception to that. I was very upset with the WWE lying about their own history. Do you have any comment on that, Miss Judy Martin?
Well, I really don't understand why they would say that when they know that, I mean, the tapes are out there. And, I mean, I know that they got a lot of tapes of us and the Jumping Bomb Angels out there, and I get letters, you know, at least one or two every week, you know, wanting autograph stuff about that book with the Bomb Angels. But I just did never understand that why he never claimed with Leilani and I, because we went through a lot with him, and he knows the situation and everything that we went through with him when we became the Glamour Girls up there and all. So I never did understand that, and to this day I don't understand that. Now
Can I answer it for you?
What's that?
Judy, can I answer it for you?
Sure.
Because Vince McMahon Jr. is ashamed of wrestling, and he's trying to rewrite history.
Hmm.
Yep.
That's why.
Well, that doesn't kind of make sense then, because that's what's made him a billionaire.
Yeah, but you know what? That brings us to, and I'm sure Dan will expound on it, this whole idea of sports entertainment versus wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Since we've got you both here, I know you're both still relatively. You mentioned fan interactions. I know involvements in conventions and other things. This evolution at some point I mean, I can kind of, as a fan, I can tell you exactly when it started, but where wrestling got away from wrestling into the entertainment venue. Joyce, you mentioned the flips and bump, 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 bump. Wrestling got away from being a fight and got into being a stunt show. These are actors, and you see that with you Judy. Before you called in, Joyce was telling the stories about the territory days. You had to go and perform for different crowds and different mannerisms in Canada and the South, but you have these women and men today who are trained from day one, the second they walk in the door, to play a character. You have one gimmick. That's all you're ever going to learn how to do for your whole career. And if that doesn't work, you see in the middle of pay-per-view matches, deer in the headlight looks from a wrestler because they have no idea what to do. This spot isn't ready, or this one moment's not ready. There's no planning. It as Angelo loves to say, they don't call it in the ring anymore. And I'm wondering where would that idea fit? Because you two are from the era of the tough as nails, where, like Mikey said, the women were a big attraction. Where would that attitude fit? Or would those women who come in expecting to play one character and have the same 5-minute match every week, would they have ever survived? Would there be any saving grace for them going to, say, Moolah school or working with one of you two?
Well,
I'd say
Judy and I could work.
I think some,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Judy.
okay. I think some of them would have survived.
Yeah.
Not all, but some would.
Because, see, Judy and I were trained. We could lead them. But they're not trained how to take a bump these days. Like I said, they do the little rolling stuff.
Mm.
If they were trained to just take a bump, we could go, Judy and I could go out there with them or with that broomstick and have a match, and you would believe it because of the way we would sell for that broom. That's the reason nowadays, if they're over and they got the long blonde hair with all the extensions and stuff, they don't want to sell. They don't want to get hurt. They don't want to see no blood. They want to just look at the camera and smile and be pretty.
Yeah.
We didn't think of being pretty. We didn't think about if we had our eyelashes on, because back in those days, we would have sweated that stuff off.
Well,
or either one of the girls flying Meredith by the hair, and our extensions would have came off in their hands.
You know what?
I was just about to say that.
We talked about that. Remember, Dan?
Yeah, on the first show, the fact that the hair mare is a move you don't see anymore.
Yeah.
Because most of the women on TV can't
Yeah,
take that
Joyce,
bump.
you don't see that anymore.
No, because they don't have the real hair. The extensions have come out. And so you don't see that. And that is such a pretty move when you fly and marry them by the hair, especially when they have long hair.
They're afraid they might break a nail now.
Damn.
Right. They're afraid. And you can't be. If you're going to wrestle, you got to be able to wrestle. If you're married to a wrestler, they can teach you how to wrestle. Don't go out there acting like a fool and taking bumps that shouldn't be taken, or either smiling when you just had a big punch. Sell it. At least sell it so that they can have time to do something. Nowadays, if they mess up a spot, like throw them to the corner and they fall down before they get to the corner, the person just stands there and goes, oh, wow. They don't just go get them and beat on them some more. I mean, take back over, do something else. They don't know how to follow through with anything, because if it's not in that script written down, if it goes wrong, they're lost.
Absolutely.
Dan, before I go, because I know that you're running the show tonight, so I'm gonna head out. But before I go, I just want to ask Judy Martin and Joyce Grable, women traditionally were not really known for their promos, but there were a couple of women who cut really good promos. Let's start with Joyce first. Joyce, in your opinion, who gave the best promo in the women's division? Who cut the best promo in your day?
Well, the thing is, back in my day, we worked territories. So we never, they would have us on TV the last week to film. That show didn't show until we had already left the territory. And once you went to another territory, you didn't have cable TV, so you couldn't see what they were doing in that territory. So we really never got to see or hear our matches until Ted turned, until we got 17 and all that, TBS. But we couldn't really hear all of the things that were said. Now, I thought Sherry Martel, after she started into it, that she could do good interviews. But I like Sherry because Sherry was Sherry. And so, I mean, she was a great person. You know, we all have our demons and stuff, things we fight every day. But Sherry was a baby doll. I mean, she was a great person.
Yeah,
really
you
was.
know, Sherry Martel's best friend is my next door neighbor.
Oh,
Yeah, Kathy
and who was that?
Fitzpatrick.
Oh,
Yeah. She's been on the show too, talking about Sherry. Judy, how about you? Who was the best promo in your opinion?
I think I agree with Joyce Cherry because Cherry was a natural at it.
yes.
You know, she could go out there, and I spent time with Cherry. Me and her went to Japan and stuff like that. And when we were over there, you know, we would practice stuff over there, and she would say, "Judy, come here. What do you think about this?" And she would start talking and everything. I said, "Okay, great, Sherry." She said, "What? Okay, I'm gonna be." I would interview her, and she would really get into it. So I mean, it was great. I thought she was really good at that. And it's just too bad that that she went out the way she did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well,
And I just
I'll tell
think
you
that,
what,
you
it
know,
was an honor speaking to you guys. I'm going to have to leave, but I will leave you in the able hands of Mike Messier and Dan the Man. Dan, thank you. You're
Yes,
doing
sir.
a great job of captaining the ship tonight. So Papa Bear is taking the night off. I just wanted to come in and say hi to my girls tonight.
I understand.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Joyce. I'll give you both a call. I'll give you a call tomorrow. I'll say hi to you, okay?
Okay.
okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Enjoy it.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Dan.
Bye.
You got it.
Mikey, take care.
See you, buddy.
Well, while we've got you both on the line, ladies, you mentioned Sherry Martel. I want to transition into another question for that, and that's the Joyce, something that might strike a little close to your heart. The WWE had announced a female battle royal that was going to be part of the WrestleMania festivities, and they named it in honor of Moolah, which they ended up dropping after some stories and various things that we'll touch on later. However, Chris Jericho mentioned in his podcast that he pitched the idea to name it after Sherry Martel after they had dropped Moolah. He wanted to call it the Sensational Invitational, which was shot down. So, Judy, I'm going to go to you first. If Moolah wasn't on the table, who would you have, if you could pick anybody from the annals of female wrestling history, who would you memorialize on that trophy?
I would probably went with Sherry because I mean I think that sensational invitation was a great idea. You know, or they could have won an All-American Women Battle Royal.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had a lot of opportunities there to bring in a different thing about women and everything. But I mean, they could have done, Sherry.
Okay.
And I did. I wonder how come they didn't even go with Mae Young, But
They had already done
yeah,
the Mae Young tournament.
I was gonna say they had the Mae Young Classic, their annual women's tournament. Joyce, I guess I'll go to you then. Obviously, your history with your history with Moolah is well documented. Assuming her name is off the table, are you with Judy? Would you have memorialized Sherry Martel on the trophy, or would you have done the more all women, just kind of like the way they have it now with it's just the women's battle royal?
I would have went with just in general, because if you're going to not put mullahs on it, because some people saying bad things about her, look at the way Sherry died, look at her history. If you're going to put one of them down, one sin's no greater than the other sin. And so if you're going to say, we're going to put it to someone that hadn't sinned as much, then you might as well knock out every one of them, because all of us have sinned one way or another. And so we shouldn't be downing someone for doing it. They should have never took Mullah's name off of it.
I can respect that.
That's the way.
I will say, and Mikey, I know, is a notorious nitpicker. At least they could have designed a trophy that wasn't so intentionally uterus shaped, right?
Well, my thing was just, I want to follow up with Joyce on about Fabulous Moolah, because I watched a few of your interviews in preparation for this Wrestling with the Future podcast, Joyce, and you were staunchly defending Fabulous Moolah, and several other of your peers were as well. Ladies that worked with Moolah and worked, I guess you could say, for her, or were trained by her. And many of you brought up the same type of points, but because the Dark Side of the Ring episode had painted Moolah in a certain way, the WWE was kind of quick to switch gears and get rid of Moolah's name on that Women's Battle Royal at Mania. And, they even kind of downplayed the importance of that Battle Royal, because a young woman, I believe Naomi, won the thing, and she was supposed to get a title match, which she never got, for winning the Battle Royal. So I guess I would just like to extend the opportunity on this platform. If you have anything further you'd like to say about Fabulous Moolah, your experiences with her, or if you'd like to further deny the allegations against her on her behalf. One thing I will say real quick is that, when somebody passes away, when someone has died, it's very easy to say what a bad person they are. But when they're alive and they can defend themselves, then then that's a different story, apparently, in the wrestling business.
Right, because, see, the thing is, they would have never said it if she was alive, because I don't care if she was 102. She'd have came at you tooth and nail, because she was a tough old woman. And, and that's just the way she was. Sure, she did some things, but so did all of us. I can't say nothing bad about her, because, hey, I was out there having fun. And so I know that what I did sometimes might have made the girls look bad, if someone was pointing the fingers at me. But like I said, I just hope and pray that nobody goes up to my closet and shakes it and my skeletons start coming out. And because if I'm dead, I'm going to haunt them. So they better do it while I'm alive, so I can go and punch them right in the face and say, you say it to this ugly face of mine. Because if you ain't got the balls to say it to my face, don't you be saying it when I'm dead. And that's what Moolah would have said. And I know she would have. And, you know, and like the thing didn't come out about the dark side until after they done said, we're not doing more.
Mm-hmm.
But on there, the preacher man, the brother, he should have said, his only word should have been, ye who without sin cast the first stone, which is if you have never committed a sin, then you just download as much as you want to. But if you've even slept with them outside of marriage, if you've ever took God's name in vain, if you've done all of these bad things, you have no right to condemn another person. I won't preach anymore. Go ahead with the next question.
You know, Joyce, you answered Angelo's question by telling him that you couldn't cut a promo, and that was better. That right there was better than half of what's on television today. And you just pulled that out from pure emotion, sitting on what looks like a nice chair at home. But you said something I want to touch on. Judy, I'm going to ask you to expand on this. She said when we were wrestling, it was fun. There are so many people in the business today that by their own admission, it's a business. They don't care about wrestling. They don't care about the business. They are making money, or they want to be in Hollywood, or they want to be in the magazines, and wrestling is the way to do that. You got a lot of these women that were fitness models, or certain male wrestlers that straight up openly don't care. They're there for the payday. Where do you fit? Obviously, you were in for the joy as well. But what is your thought on the fact that spark is gone? That there's so many people in the business that aren't in it for fun or the love anymore. They see wrestling as money.
Well, I tell all the girls I train.
Go ahead, Judy.
Go ahead, Judy. Go ahead, Judy.
I said that is the key word right there. Wrestling. They're not. They don't have the love for the business sense of wrestling. They don't look at it as a wrestling business, like you say. It's a hop to the movies or whatever. In order to be good, you really got to love what you did, and and fun comes along. If you have fun in what you do when you work, and that's at any job. If you work any job and you having fun at your job, you're going to do the best you can, and you're going to stay with it.
Isn't that the old... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we did have a lot of fun on the road. We were with different territories. We may be back in that territory the next year. And we only got to see the guys, whenever we went to the territories and everything, we traveled with some of the guys, and some of them we didn't. Sometimes we were, travel on our own selves. But it was fun. We loved the business and everything. And we looked after one another, what I'm talking about, looking after one another. When you walked in that ring, you had to pay attention and know what you're doing in there to protect yourself and also protect that person you're working with. Because you're only as good as that other person is in that ring. If they don't want you to look good, they're gonna take you out. And I've done that to some girls myself. So.
Well, isn't that the old expression that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life?
Right.
So true. That's so true. Because if you don't love it, get out of it. And Judy and I, we traveled a lot together. We always had fun, but when it came time to go in that ring, we gave the people 110%. No matter if we were sick, didn't feel good, had a hangover, anything, we gave them what they bought that ticket to see. And that's the name of the game. But today, everybody thinks they're supposed to get paid for everything. When we wrestle, they come up holding papers up at the ringside, and we'd sign our names. But now, if you're there and you want to sit in here, $10 or more. People just don't want, like a lot of people don't want to do these telecommunication things because they're not getting paid for it. I mean, the almighty dollar has really ruined a lot of people. And, and I just don't see it. Do it because you love it. If not, get out. We don't need you anyhow. At least do it. And you can tell when someone loves it because they're going to give that extra little grunt or that extra little smile at you. They're going to go that one step further. And that's what you look for. The ones that want to do, not the ones that say, okay, it's over, let's go. And we're gone.
Right.
That's what you look for. You can't be money hungry. Because if we were money hungry, we sure did go to the wrong business. Because, sometimes you'd say, I took those boats for this. But then the next territory would make up for it and it would even out.
We've had a few guests on the show that have told stories of their when they started out in the territories, the trip to the doctor cost more than they made that night.
That's true.
True. That is so true.
Mike, I see.
Go
ahead.
Some of our, we traveled from Columbia, South Carolina, and if we had to go to Calgary, that's a lot of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And so you usually try to hit the territories to get there to help pay for that gasoline. So, we did the best we could with what we had to work with.
I never thought about it that way. You would book yourself in Tennessee, New York, on your way to the territories you would have to drive through anyway to get to Canada. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, that way it was like, that's the reason I told you, when I went to Australia, it was to get to New Zealand.
Right.
Because it was right there, the plane ticket, you could go there and then go over to New Zealand. And we went from California, went to Honolulu, Hawaii, we worked there a week, then we go to New Zealand or wherever else on that side, Japan, and then back to Hawaii and back through California again.
Okay.
And so that way, everybody didn't have to pay so much for the plane tickets. They just had to pay from there to there.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And
yeah.
So
there you go, folks. You learn something new every day. Mikey, I see you chomping at the bit. Why don't you jump in on this conversation?
Well, here's a question that, and ladies, feel free to abstain from this question if it's too personal, but we hear a lot about these male wrestlers in the 80s and 90s and even today having, liaisons, so to speak, with female fans. Was that something as women wrestlers? Did you have male groupies that would offer their services to you for accompaniment? I'm just morbidly curious, but like I said, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, so feel free to abstain from the question if you have to.
We had fans, we had male fans that would say, hey, can I take you out to dinner tonight? And so, but we had all of the guys in the dressing room that would like to take us out to dinner. Now, had I rather go out with that, or I'll go out with the ones that could fight if I get in a fight. And, and that's how it was. I really never went out with anyone that invited me to dinner, a fan, at that time. Since it's all different now, I've gone out several times with them, in platonic and stuff. And it has always been very nice. They've always treated me nice, but it was totally different with the guys and their counterparts there. It was a totally different situation there.
Judy, would you like to answer the same question?
Oh, yeah. I've been out with some fans at some time, but they have been very nice. They never tried anything like anything sexual or anything like that towards me. I guess they maybe thought they got their butt kicked, and they probably would have. Because I wasn't out there. I was out there to have a good time too. But there's a line that you draw. And I never went by that, above that line. If it's a fan, it's a fan. Because as a heel, you really had a hard time. It's very seldom you really find a really a heel fan that really, really, was a heel fan because they loved the way you worked and stuff like that. That didn't want to kick your butt really because you hurt the baby face. So
yeah, most times
yeah,
the baby
I've
face
always,
that got those kind
It's a very, I want to expand on Mike's question a little bit. It's a very derogatory term. It's come up numerous times as we've interviewed male guests in the past. They've told some stories about the groups they refer to as ring rats. The ladies I'm talking about. A ring rat. Arena rat. I'm sorry. Were there, obviously, I guess then there weren't male equivalent of arena rats that were chasing the female talent from venue to venue?
Yeah,
yeah, there were
had
some.
them. Yeah, there were some. But the men succumbed to more than we did. They just, a man would say, "Yeah, come on out back. Here's my car," and there it would get to go down. We're more picky. At least take them to the motel.
Well, you know what? Then, I again, morbid curiosity is getting the best of me. The story you just described, I've got to know if you're willing to spill a little bit of dirt. Who in your travels was the horn dog that had a woman waiting for him every arena he went to?
Oh my God! Just about every one of them. Just about your head baby face in every territory. He had all he ever wanted. Let me tell you, he did.
Who's that?
I said, your lead baby face in the
The
territory.
lead baby face of any territory. Okay.
Yes. What, like Tommy Rich here in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
You know, great guy. Me and him always got along good, and but please, and so almost all of them. I couldn't start naming names. I'd have to name all the wrestlers that ever was in the arena with.
Well, expand on that answer, Judy. Is she right? Whoever the baby face was had his pick of the women?
Oh, she would. She's right. Because we go to the hotel, because a lot of times we stayed at the same hotel they did, and they would be in the lobby waiting on them and stuff. So it was ridiculous. And I tell you the story where it got so bad.
Go ahead, Judy.
It was so bad one time when we were up in New York that when we were checked into the hotel, and the guy in the lobby, he said, "Well, y'all just checked in a little bit ago." I said, "What you mean, y'all?" He said, "Well, we have got the girl wrestler named Judy Martin here too." I said, "Well, who is she then?" I said, "I'm Judy Martin." And I said, "I can pull out my driver's license and everything, and tell him my real name, And he said, "Well, 2 girl wrestlers just checked in here." I'm like, we're all 4 together, so where'd the other 2 come from? And to kind of find out, those were girls that was with those guys. They checked them up under the girl wrestler's name so they could get a discount.
Oh, that's funny.
And we went to Vince's office one day, and Linda McMahon was there, and we told her, I said, "Look, is there any way we can get an ID or something to show that we're with the WWF?" Because I said we were having hard times about the hotels, because I said all these breeder rats are in there before we do, and they're getting a deal. And Leilani and I got, our ID with WWE, and I still got mine somewhere around here. With our names and our real name on it for we work with the WWF.
Well,
Wow.
Look at the rabbit hole you just dug, Mikey.
Well, I guess, because Dan, it's just a thing that we hear so much about these, Ric Flair stories or these road stories of the male wrestlers, but I was just curious what it was like for the women. And I guess I'll ask a follow-up question, maybe a little more polite question, I guess, which was it, as an open-ended question, ladies, do you feel that your experience as wrestlers being women was different than the men, your colleagues, your peers? And if so, what were some of the differences, both good and bad?
Good question.
Well, we never went into a territory. Yeah, usually we'd go to a territory just like 2 weeks at a time. And so when we would go in, that would mean that 2, 3, 4 of the guys that were in the territory would be off that week. And so we'd get heat with them because they said we were taking food out of their kids' mouths because we were coming into the territories. But we had to make money too. It wasn't our fault that they had a family and that they were the ones that were getting kicked off the card to bring us in, because they would bring us in on the sweeps weeks mostly for the TV, because they said that when the ladies were on the TV, their ratings would go up. Because most of the time we were sexy or we had a good body, we were lady wrestlers, and so some of the guys would get ill with us, especially the ones on the bottom. The ones that were on the top, they were going to be there no matter what.
Right.
That was the only differences that I ever found with us, because especially after they saw us work, because then they said, oh God, I wonder, look at the match they just had, we got to follow it. But most of the guys were really nice about everything. Most of them would, if we were in the same dressing room as the guys, when I'd say, I want to get dressed, they would leave the room, go out while I got dressed, or either I would go to the bathroom to get dressed. I've heard lately that some of the girls are complaining because the guys won't leave the dressing room or go to the bathroom. There's a lock on the door. We did it 1,000 times to get dressed. But most of the times, if the guys respect you, they respect you all the way, and they're going to leave the room. Some of them said, here, let me put up this drape or towels, and we'll just stand right there. Most of them, you can trust them. There's some of them that you see them taking a peek, but when they do, just say, hey, look here. And that would, they'd go backwards, and you have to be more aggressive than them then.
Right.
And so you learn how to work them, and that's the name of the game. It's how to work them.
Judy, you have anything to add to that?
She was right. I mean, we got a lot of respect from a lot of the guys. And, some of them could be assholes, but once they tried you and see where you were at, they left you alone and they didn't mess with you because, a lot of them, they knew we was up there ready to work. They were more like, well, hey, you taking money out of our pockets. I even had heard one of the guys, and he was a top-notch guy at that time, saying, shit, the girls ain't here, and that means they're taking money out of our pocket, But like I told him, I said, well, if you could work, we wouldn't be taking no money out of your pocket.
Right. Well,
but
let me
add...
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The older guys in this generation, when I started, a lot of them showed respect to the girls.
Well, let me ask you something. I know maybe it was a lot different in the territories because you were traveling so much, but there are numerous, I can think of a half dozen off the top of my head, pretty high-profile wrestling couples today, and that's much more prevalent. Excuse me, much more prevalent in the social media age where they have joint Facebook accounts or whatever, where it seems like almost every female on the roster is in some way dating or related to one of the men on the roster. You obviously, the way you were talking, it wasn't like that back then. There was not a lot of where the men and women couples would travel together. I guess, did that not happen back then?
Well, no, because the guys, when they would go to a territory, they would stay. And so when we would go in just for a few weeks, now when we went in, and if our boyfriend was working that territory, then that was fine and dandy for us. But that's one reason Moolah would get so ill at the girls when they would date the wrestlers, because that means that a year or two down the line, she's going to be pregnant. And so then we're going to she's going to quit. They're going to get married, and stuff. But see, today, WWE and stuff, they travel all together. They're together all the time.
Right.
And so it's a lot easier to date them because they are together. They don't have to say, well, I'm in Oklahoma. Next week I'm going to be in New York. I don't know when I'll get back out here to see you. So that's kind of a long distance relationship.
I understand.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, then let me ask, as we get to the end of the program here, one of the best reactions I've ever seen, you can, I'm sure, NWA legend yourself, you can vouch for this. You talked about the baby faces, the pick of the litter the baby faces had. Best reaction I've ever seen was a match involving Terry Taylor and Ricky Morton, and of course Terry Taylor was working with the Rock and Roll Express, and they were getting beat up on, and there were women in the front row that were ready to jump the barricade to go save, heaven forbid, these women would jump the barricade. You put your hand on Ricky Morton, and I'm wondering, did maybe not to that extent of the, like you talked about, Joyce, where they were going to throw themselves in front of a car to save the babyface. Did you have that reaction from the fans where it was like, oh, you can't beat, they're beating up on the babyface, or did the fans treat you as equals, where the heat was the same, the match was the same, or did the fans kind of have that, oh, don't hurt her too hard, she's only a girl? How was that?
Oh no! When we got heat. We've had them come in the ring on us before. Your thing is, as soon as they put their head through that rope, you don't give them time to come in the ring. You kick them right then.
Mm-hmm.
In Houma, Louisiana, Tony Rose and Donna Cristantello were the champions. Me and Vicki Williams were the challengers. And we had just won the belts from them. And we're down there, and it's a little town now. And they put us on main event. We had a riot. The people came into the ring. We had to fight them back to the dressing room. Throw them in their dress, go to our dressing room. Then the people are all coming in the dressing room. Wasn't but one of the guys and the referee there to come help save us, because we could only do so much. The Hills had that much heat. Donna and Tony had that much heat that we had a riot. They told us, don't come back to our town. They didn't want us back. We never went back against each other that town because they didn't like it that they had a riot.
That's crazy.
And we could get as much heat as the guys do, and yes, the people would come into the ring just like with the guys. It's according to where you was at.
That's crazy. Judy, do you have any good fan interaction stories like that?
Oh yeah, we got. I was working with Winona and down in Alabama, and we had our dressing rooms was right beside one another. You know, we can kind of talk to one another through like the walls and everything, but we went out 2 separate doors. And so I told her, I said, I'm gonna look out the door and see what's going on out there. So when I opened the door and everything like that, some fans was coming by, and Winona had opened her door. And they was telling her, oh, she's right there next to you. And Winona was going, oh, so really? Said, I'll just wait till I get to the ring, then I'll take care of her for you. Them little buzzers come right there and kicked my door and shut my fingers up in the door.
Oh no.
Yeah, I told Winona when we got in the ring, I said, I'm gonna pay your ass back for my fingers. You know, and then her and I was in Puerto Rico and Barbados, and they like to riot down there because I was with a guy they call the headhunter. He took a little skull out to the ring, and she was with another babyface down there, and we had a mixed tag. So the finish was going to be where I got the referee's attention along with the other babyface guy, and then the headhunter would go in there and slam Winona, and Winona was supposed to go like completely limp when they tried to pick her up. Well, when they tried after that, and then people was getting mad and they started throwing stuff and everything. So then the referee says they're fixing to come in the ring, and he was calling for security. So he said, I'm gonna have to get the headhunter back first. Stay in the ring, don't leave. I said, where the hell am I going? There's too many people out there. And so Winona was still laying in the middle of the ring, and shoot, I was down there trying to pull her up. I said, Winnie, get up. I said, these people coming in the ring. She said, I ain't moving. I said, Winnie, get up. Show them that you're okay, because I said, these people's going to start getting this ring. She said, I ain't moving. And she stayed right there. So the referee brought some other guys out there to get me. And as I was getting out the ring, somebody slapped me in the back. And when I got back to the dressing room, their whole handprint was in the middle of my back.
That's crazy.
And I mean, I'd never been scared before. But that night I was scared. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm. And when Winnie got back in the ring, I said, Winnie, don't ever do that. She says, oh, I was about to pee myself. But they brought her back, slung her over their shoulders and brought her back.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's a testament to how good you were as workers, that you could get that kind of real reaction out of a crowd. So I'll tell you what, Mikey, you've got two of the biggest names in women's wrestling. One final question. What do you got?
Well, I guess I'll bounce back to Judy for a moment, just because I think Angelo kind of cut you off when I was asking you earlier about what you thought of them doing this women's tag team championship without tipping the hat to the Glamour Girls and the Jumping Bomb Angels. So you can expand upon that, Judy, but I also want to ask, what do you think, and I'll ask the same thing to Joyce after, but Judy first, what do you think of modern day women's wrestling? Are you familiar with AEW's women division? Are you familiar with WWE, Tessa Blanchard? Do you have any thoughts on what we call the current product as far as women's wrestling goes? And if there's anything further you want to say about that tag team title debacle with the McMahons, please do.
Okay, with the about the Battle Royal, they named it, that was really all I had to say really about that. And for them not about the tag team belts and everything, that really hurts me to know that our names weren't even mentioned when we really did a great job up there for him. And that he even called one of the towns one night and what's his name, the Indian guy?
Jay Strongbow? Jay Strongbow?
Yeah, Jay come back there and he said, Vince is on the phone and he wants to talk to one of you guys. And Patty goes, you go talk to him. I told her, you go talk to him. Finally, I ended up going because Patty wouldn't go. And she said, and Patty was thinking, oh, what have we done wrong? We thought we've done something wrong. I said, Patty, we haven't done anything wrong. And so when I got to the phone, Jay got on the phone. He said, Judy's on the phone, Vince. And Vince come back. He said, oh, I just want to let you know, you girls know that I'm hearing really good things about you. I'm hearing that y'all knock on the dead every night, that y'all was the best matches on the card, and that I'm really glad to hear that, and I'm proud of you. And he said, I want to let you know that Strongbow will be giving y'all $1,000 a piece tonight, and that's y'all's money. No PC comes out of that, nothing, because y'all are having one hell of a match, and I'm not getting that just from Jay. I'm getting that from all the guys
Nice.
that that runs the shows and stuff. And I said, huh? He said, yeah. He said, and thank you, girls, for working so hard. But that's what for him to do that, he must have really thought knew our matches was good, and then not to say anything about us throughout the whole thing, even the the Hall of Fame thing. That I didn't watch wrestling for a long, long time because I was really bitter and angry at the end because of the situation from Japan and stuff like that, and with Pat Patterson and stuff after I talked to Pat Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
And all. So I just did away with wrestling for years and years, and probably in the last 10 years is probably when I went to the first convention, I think it was, that for Greg Price, that I really started paying attention to it, now. As far as the women today in the matches, there's some good girls out there having some good matches, and I think if they would really train to do the psychology of the ring, it would even be better. Tessa Blanchard, I really don't know much about her personally. I've heard things, and I've seen things on the internet and stuff about her. The part about her with the men's title, I don't agree with that, because I don't think she fits the category of being one of the toughest women out there, and I don't think she looks the part about the toughest woman out there to be a champion and beat all the guys in that organization that she was in.
And she just left the company without losing the title, by the way, so that kind of blew that whole angle to shreds. That was a great answer, Judy.
Yeah, so someone like China, I would believe somebody like China, had the physique and stuff that would do it, would hurt the guys her size and stuff like that. Now, if all the guys were maybe Tessa's size, it might be a little different, but I just don't think that would, I don't think that should have happened. And I'm quite sure now that the organization is probably thinking the same thing now.
Exactly, because
very much so.
Because Impact Wrestling has a tendency to lose top talent, especially when they have a championship belt around their waist. And thank you, Judy, so much for being on the show. And then just to follow up with Joyce, same question, Joyce. Do you have any, maybe to frame the question a little bit differently for you, do you have any advice that you would pass on in general to the young Sasha Bankses and the young Baileys and there's so many great women's wrestlers. I do think that what Judy said about the psychology is a wonderful point. But do you have any further advice for the women wrestling walking in your bootsteps, so to speak, Joyce Grable?
Yes, if they would learn first how to take a bump, and then the holds, and how to reverse them, and how to get out of them, they could work with anyone without having to call it in the dressing room. But I also want to reflect back on the title thing. Vicki Williams and I won the title in Madison Square Gardens, 1973, the first time. And that Vince Sr. was the only time that he was photographed, and you can pull this up on the internet, him holding our hands up between the two of us because we had just won the championship. And then we won it a second time in New York. And so even back then, we went as the tag team champions. And then Wendy Richter and I went up there and defended the belts. And when they said that it's the first time, yeah, I said, what do you mean? I mean, you can pull it up on the internet, you can find out anything.
Right.
Even a child find out that there was champions up there, because they don't call it the WWE, actually the WWE championship belts. They call it just the girls tag team belts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it, to not even get recognized, like Judy said, as if we didn't even exist in the 70s and 80s. It leaves a little bitter taste in your mouth. But who cares? We're old now, and all we're doing is trying to make it from day to day and have fun doing it still. And that's the reason I still do these interviews, because I still love wrestling. I still love the people that want to promote it. And I just love life. And I have enjoyed being with y'all tonight.
Thank you, Joyce.
You couldn't have, again, you give yourself no credit on the promo. You couldn't have scripted better parting words. Judy, thank you so much for calling in. I know Joyce was excited to hear from you.
Yeah, I was glad to talk to her and everything. So,
but thank you for having us. Angelo said he'll get in touch with you later in the week. We'd love to have you back on the show. We had a great time with the last women's roundtable you were on, so we look forward to hearing from you again. So for the Wrestling with the Future fans, Judy Martin, everyone, thank you.
Thank you.
Joyce, thank you so much for doing this. I can't stress enough, as a wrestling fan and a wrestling historian, this was a huge honor. I was excited. Honestly, I know the cards played out that way. I was excited when I found out I was going to be hosting the show. I didn't get a chance to be on your part one. It coincided with a personal scheduling conflict, so I was excited to have you. You tell the best stories, and I know Angelo is also going to reach out to you later in the week. We'd love to have you back for part 3. Mikey, I'm sure you still have a mountain of questions. So, Joyce, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, as long as y'all come up with the questions, I will come up with an answer for you. And I have really enjoyed it. Y'all take care of yourself. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Joyce.
Mikey, that was a good time.
Well, they're classy ladies, and the thing is, Dan, that I was honest when I said that made me very frustrated, disappointed, aggravated when the modern day WWE is slighting not only these women for their hard work and achievements, but also their own history.
Yes.
It makes. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you're absolutely right. I remember the first time something ever really stuck out at me was I had some friends over and we were watching the Survivor Series, and they mentioned John Cena, and they said, oh, he was the lone survivor, the only survivor on his team the first time he competed. Of course, he wasn't. Him and Chris Benoit were joint survivors. And I remember thinking, I was like, they went out of their way to emphasize lone survivor. And I was like, come on. Yeah, I understand. There comes a point when, much like you were talking about with the belts, don't mention it if you're going to rewrite history. Because let's be honest, to this day, wrestling fans still do the what, they still do the woo when people chop. Wrestling fans have some of the best memories of any entertainment fans in the world. You're not going to be able to tell people, you, me, the average wrestling fan who still follows the product, the first time we've ever had women's tag matches. I'm pretty sure I've seen women tag matches main event shows in the past. Like as a kid, I was at shows where, these things happened, and you're straight up, like you said, slighting your own history. And they want to emphasize women's revolution, divas revolution, whatever they want to call it, without Joyce Grable and without Wendy Richter and Leilani Kai and without Judy Martin, Sasha Banks doesn't have a career. Neither does Bayley or Becky Lynch. Ric Flair probably doesn't get his daughter in the business if the women that were around when he was wrestling didn't blaze the trail for her. You're absolutely right. It's genuinely frustrating.
It is frustrating, and just to put more dirt on this WWE coffin that we're burying right now, because sometimes they do deserve it.
Absolutely.
You would think just a logical, intelligent human being would say that if you say, hey, back in 1987, we had a 5-on-5 Survivor Series match that had women's tag team champions and the Glamour Girls. We had a women's champion in Rockin' Robin. We had Sensational Sherry, Fabulous Moolah. And these women had just as good a match on that show as anybody else on that very first Survivor Series. And we were doing this back in 1987. You would think that would be encouraging to young women today.
Yeah.
Women in general, all fans would say, wow, this is a pretty open-minded company. They've been having featured women's matches and tag team titles all the way back to the 80s. And yeah, you went into the Sable era and stuff like that. But overall, their history with women is pretty respectful. You would think that they would have the common sense and intelligence to see it that way. But instead, the bias is not towards embracing their own history, but it's everything has to be new. Like Stephanie McMahon, Stephanie McMahon on Raw 4 or 5 years ago when she brought out Charlotte, Sasha Banks, and as a puppet master character, Stephanie McMahon says, okay, Charlotte, you're with Paige and you're with Becky. And okay, Sasha, because you're African American, I'm going to put you with Naomi and Tamina. Why else would she be with them?
Yeah, the three minorities, yeah.
Right, I'll put you with the people that you're supposed to be with. I mean, play that today and see how it flies. Just a couple of years later, and so this tendency for the WWE to think that everything has to be taught to us like we're 5-year-olds. It is very frustrating for long-term wrestling fans and long-term wrestlers when you feel that your intelligence is being insulted, and and the WWE wonders why their ratings are in the toilet. Well, it's because people like myself have been telling other fans, don't watch a product, no matter what it is, that insults you and insults your intelligence.
And you figure they would do it the other way around. I would have, because let's be honest, the WWE, one thing they're very good at is there's video packages they can put together, especially like memorials or hype packages for matches. I would embrace the past. You have women main events, women's tag matches, like you said, Moolah, Wendy Richter, have those, embrace that kind of, maybe rewrite. If you're going to rewrite the history, get rid of the Sable era, the bra and panty pudding matches. Go from the montage of, Wendy Richter and Leilani Kai to a Trish Stratus Lita match. And then to, maybe the transition there where you had like Alicia Fox and Nikki and then AJ Lee, and then there's Charlotte and there's Paige. And then, you can make it look like women have mattered in your company. And all you really got to do is ignore it. I mean, really, the Attitude Era for women's wrestling only lasted a few years. And then there was that period of, you had your Charlotte, you had your Trish Stratus and your Lita and your Beth Phoenix, and then everybody else was a bikini model. But you at least had a couple people that could put a match together. If you're going to rewrite history, write out the crap. Don't write out the good stuff and say, look, here's a montage that has Sunny and Terry Runnels and these people who were models and not wrestlers, and then look, Charlotte and Becky are out, and now for the first time ever, women matter, because you have this entire history, and your older fans who now want it, like you said, they're not going to come back to the product that's, one, is terrible compared to what they watch, but that basically Vince McMahon's on TV every week saying, if you're over the age of 30, I don't care about you as a fan. I'm targeting the children and the people who don't know any better, that I'm spoon feeding them bullshit.
And guess what, Dan? The stat that I keep hearing, which I have a hard time believing, is that most WWE fans left standing are over 55. Now, I challenge that statistic. I don't know where that's coming from, but that's popped up on the internet several times. So here's the thing, Dan. When I was a kid, kids liked what they weren't supposed to like.
Right.
We wanted to see Poltergeist. We wanted to see Jason
Absolutely.
Voorhees slice
Yeah.
somebody up in Friday the 13th. So if you're the worst case example with this with WWE was about three years ago, they would have the Usos say, "We're in the Usos penitentiary," and they would show animated prison bars on the screen while the Usos are cutting a promo in the ring before a live audience.
Right.
They would actually go in and animate the screen. And when what's his name, Braun Strowman would say, "You want to get these hands," the words "these hands" would appear.
Yeah, I remember almost the cartoony effects they had for a little while.
Right, and that didn't last. I spoke up against it. Others did as well. But the thing is, are we supposed to be in kindergarten now? Like, and here's the thing, folks. We get it. For someone who's watching this clip and then they're saying, "Well, these guys are wrestling fans, and why should they expect to be treated with some type of dignity?" Well, it's because we got into this stuff when we were kids. It became part of our system. We're proud to be wrestling fans. I'm wearing an Iron Sheik shirt in public today, and other people relate to that. But when we're insulted by the biggest company, the WWE, you start to lose your passion for it. You start to lose, and what this comes down to, if the McMahons want to hear this, then we are less likely to spend our money on your products if you treat us like idiots, and if you deny the history of your own women's division. We're less likely to spend as much money. I can tell you, Dan, that in 2007, I probably spent the most money I ever did on pro wrestling because I was buying action figures left and right. It was a good year for WWE and Impact TNA Wrestling for action figures.
Right.
And I was buying Edge and Mick Foley sets. I was buying a lot of wrestling DVDs. Like that's like maybe one of the last years where the WWE is really cranking out some good DVD box sets of Dusty Rhodes and the Four Horsemen.
I was going to say that the mid to late 2000s was when they did all the legacy collections and all that. Yeah.
Right. So now I know that the WWE is all happy and hot and bothered in a good way for them about their deals with Saudi Arabia and their deals with Fox TV. But if those if the Fox SmackDown ratings continue to be piss poor, because people like myself and maybe yourself are tuning out and not as emotionally invested, and hey, you know what, I'll catch the highlights on YouTube, or if something really happens, somebody will tweet it.
Right.
If they're not making these shows appointment viewing, then guess what, folks? The WWE eventually, they can't provide crappy entertainment that people are no longer emotionally attached to forever. Eventually the wheels are going to fall off.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you have your niche market, and you see that now with the Wednesday night, what they call the Wednesday night wars. Like, the ratings just came out this week. You have NXT was airing their Great American Bash special in a challenge to AEW's Fyter Fest special, and NXT barely won, and it didn't even crack 800,000. Like, 800,000 is winning. I remember WCW having 7 million and losing that week. You know, here 800,000, and the highest rated Raw ever was 8.3. 8.3 million people watching one episode of Raw. And Nitro had a 6 something. So you got 14 million people watching wrestling in one day. Here, between the two programs, it's less than 1.6 million. And that's supposedly, we're being pitched like that's a good thing. Your audience is 80% of what it was 20 years ago. That's ridiculous. Or I should say it's down 80% from 20 years ago. But yeah, it's crazy, and it's a lot to talk about. But as we wrap up, Mike, I know you've got a lot to plug, so give me your stuff.
Well, Apollonia Festival, my film festival, has just, we're adding a photography festival. So if people are on filmfreeway.com, and if you're a photographer, either a professional or an amateur, it may not be ready tonight, but it'll be ready within the next day or so. Look for Avalonia photography competition. So Avalonia is Avalonia. That comes from Disregard the Vampire, a Mike Messier documentary. Everyone can watch that for free on YouTube. MikeMessier.com has several links to a bunch of Mike Messier stuff, and most of it is free. So I provide free entertainment, and I dare say that I provide better free entertainment than the WWE charges you to watch.
There it is. I was wondering when you were going to drop that.
Well, there it is, buddy.
So as you say, MikeMessier.com for all your Mike Messier needs. As
Wants
for us,
and desires, yes.
and needs and desires. That's right. As for us, Wrestling with the Future podcast, we're on YouTube. Obviously, we can be found anywhere podcasts are distributed. We are on more than 130 podcast stations. We're also on Facebook, Wrestling with the Future, a closed group. Facebook, Wrestling with the Future podcast. We're on Twitter at Wrestling Future. That's no G, Wrestling Future. So for Dan the Man, for Mike Messier, Wrestling with the Future. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and buy the T-shirt. Currently running a special 3 large T-shirts for $20. Use the promo code 3shirt special. That's number 3 shirt special. 3 large T-shirts for $20. For Wrestling with the Future, we've had fun, and we'll see you next time.